So, I'm living here in Florida, and got a younger brother. He's a machinist, and I've always been interested in metalworking. And just talking to him, like, I really need a lathe. I like fabricating. Not that great at it, but usually, if I need something, I'll make it, and it works out. So, talking to my brother, I'm like, well, probably the first piece of equipment I should get is a lathe. And then so we're talking. He's like, oh, you should just get you a little South Bend. You can pick one up for next to nothing. Then the good home shop lathe. So start looking around. And apparently the Southeast, just prices are really inflated. We did have a South Bend 13-inch. It was not hooked up, couldn't be ran. And I think the asking price is like $2,500. Seen a lot of Atlas 6-inch lathes for $1,500 to there was a couple that were $650, but I'm not really looking for a 6-inch Atlas. So anyway, we don't really have a whole lot of lathes pop up on Craigslist or on eBay that are within driving distance, and so just happened to check out the government liquidation sites, and I saw that Florida State was auctioning off a lathe, and it was a Monarch, and I knew Monarch made good solid lathes, and so I learned what kind it was, and I didn't know what a 10EE was at the time, and then I read about it, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is something that would be nice to have. And considering it was in the basement of the psychology building, and they were building rat experiments and various apparatus for psychological testing, Skinner boxes and stuff like that. So I knew it didn't have a whole lot of heavy use on it. From what I saw, they turned mostly plastic and aluminum. The machine looked real good, so I decided to up my minimum bid, or my maximum bid, just based on the fact that any other lathe that I would have to I'm going to have to be driving a day. I'll probably take the wife and the kid, and we'll stay in a hotel and have to rent a trailer and blah, blah, blah. And so I jacked my price up and paid more than I should have, considering it was advertised as non-running. But talking to the guys in the machine shop and having read a ton on this thing before the auction closed, I'm pretty confident that I can get it to run. I'm not too concerned with the module drive system. It's old analog electronics, but it's not too complicated. Worst case scenario, I got about 2 tubes. That will kind of suck, but hopefully that's not the case. The machine did run up until about 6 years ago. I think that's what the guy said. And then they started having erratic speed control. He said no matter what speed it was on, it would always lope between the same speed, just oscillate. And so I know there's a calibration on the module, and it could be some bad wiring. I found some junk in there that I'm gonna have to fix, and so we'll see what we see. So anyway, I paid too much for a lathe that doesn't work, but it's a really low hours, good condition, solid 10EE. It's inch only. It doesn't have electronic lead screw reverse. It does have taper attachment. Came with a 8-inch 4-jaw, 8-inch 3-jaw, and the collet nose with the drawbar, and so it's I don't think I totally got screwed on the deal, but I paid more than I wanted, but I think it's worth it. But who knows? We'll see how much money I have to pour into it. But I think it's just going to mainly be a few electrical gremlins. So enough rambling on. We'll get to looking at the machine. So I've already ran through all the knobs and levers and everything. It all appears to be working. Just a little dirty. my thread, and cross feed, carriage feed. Drum switch feels pretty good. Detents pretty well. There's a pin missing from this shaft here, so that concerns me a little bit. And I'm hoping that this wasn't the start of some repair for this shaft that runs through the gearbox. All my selections over here are nice and free, and it gets real tight, and once I get through that, it's nice and free over here. So hopefully I don't have a bent shaft. If I do, that's going to be a total pain in the butt. Take all that apart and fix it, or whatever would have to be done. I don't know if I can fix a part or make a part or order a part. But anyway, I'll burn that bridge when I get there. But yeah, the gearbox seems to work fine. Got, let's see. It's got the threading turning now. And if I remember which, there we go. And so that would be just the feed gearbox. So all that seems to work, and I can put it in any position according to the chart. I think this has an electrical interlock, so I might have to be under power to move it, but I did get inside and trip the little catch or whatever it is that locks you out of it, and all that's intact. My carriage lock works, and the condition of the ways are pretty good. I'll get in here for a close-up. Hopefully I won't bobble the camera around too much. But you can see it looked pretty good. There's a little bit of staining from where the carriage was parked, but I don't really see any wear on the metal itself. I haven't really stuck an indicator to it yet, but just visually I just don't see how there could be that much, and considering it did not come from a production shop, I doubt it saw a whole lot of hours. So this model does not have a coolant pump, so it's never been used with plug coolant. And electrically, it's all original. It's got one timer here. It's been replaced at some point. Looks like all the contactors and relays and transformers are original. I've pulled a lot of this off just to inspect the wiring. I don't think I'll have to replace any here, but there are a few problems in the module drive. Oh, and if anyone was curious, although it didn't come with a coolant pump, there's no button, there's no pump in the base. It has the wiring and the contactor for it. And here you have your 3 phases coming in to power that. And so that's kind of neat. And over here is where the module drive sits. So we can take a peek in here. The module screws on right here. I have it. It's in the house. Just looking at it for any sort of damage. But it looks pretty good. I might have to replace one wire on it. In here, the Thyrotrons, I've taken them out. I took them out for shipment. I just left this guy in here because it has much less mass and it's already broken. You can see the end cap is kind of whatever resin glued it to the end of the tube has failed. It's still electrically connected. There's a couple of frayed wires, but these are cheap enough to replace. The cloth insulation is kind of deteriorated in here. We got this lug is tightened right on top of this other wire. so there could be some contact there. The guys that had this were complaining about spindle speed oscillations. No matter what you did, it would just oscillate up and down. They didn't really specify what RPM range it was doing it, but either the module's out of calibration or they have some electrical gremlin. So once I get this rewired, put some power to it and see what happens. But there's some real dodgy looking splices here, these crappy little butt connectors, and some wire nuts here to this transformer. So obviously something was replaced at some point and just kind of patched in. I don't know if you can see, but I can take my fingernail and just scrape the insulation off. So this end is plastic insulated, but everything from here over is going to have all the wiring replaced, and I'll just pull those out one at a time and trim them, resolder it where it needs to, and hopefully that'll fix any electrical gremlins that are in there. This guy comes with the taper attachment. It's very dirty, so I'll have to take that off and clean it up. It came with a telestock also. I've taken the telestock and all the chucks to work, and just in my spare time clean those up. So when it comes time to do that, when I get those all cleaned up, I might have some more room on my bench at work, I'll take the taper attachment off, clean it up real good. I haven't cleaned the lathe at all. Still has a lot of oil stains and junk down in the sump. There's a few things I'm not sure about. For instance, what went here. Looks like something was bolted there at the facility where it was, as well as there. And then another couple of bolts there. That's a hanger for something, probably some, and there's another hanger there. So I don't think it's not big enough for the drawbar, but maybe some accessory that came with the lathe. Got the transformer inside of there. All that wiring looks pretty good. And there's another little bolt flange there. And it could have been something that came with a lathe, or something that FSU added. So here's where the original dealer put their little plate on there. So yeah, they had added on a outlet here in the back, and had bonded the earth ground to the neutral. So pretty sure that's a no-no. I mean, you can do it in a panel, but I don't think on the machine itself, because that was just screwed into a lug in the back of the outlet box. Then I don't think that would have anything to do with interfering with the operation of the machine, because I don't think any of the electronics are referenced to like a chassis ground. But who knows? There's no telling what I'll find when I start tearing it apart. Got the cool flame hardened placard on there, and you can see the lubrication used to work at some point. There's a lot of what Tom calls weasel snot all over this thing, so that'll be fun to clean off. Backlash is pretty good. I got about 2 thousandths on the cross slide. Compound has quite a bit. It's got like 20 thousandths. So I may need a nut. But it's still better than a lot of lathes I've seen. Not that I'm a master of metalworking equipment, but it's not ridiculously worn out. It's not clapped out, as they say. Spindle turns nice and smooth. Don't have any issues with any binding or noise. Of course, that may change when it's under load or under speed. This is the original motor and gearbox that came with the lathe. It's a General Electric, and the guys had replaced it in the hopes that it would fix their problem, but alas, it did not. The gearbox was loosely attached, so when I got it, I went ahead and took everything apart just to check all the gears. One of the gears had fallen off inside, off the shift forks, and everything was kind of out of whack. I took it apart, and none of the teeth were damaged. Everything looked real good. Put it all back together, and it shifts fine and does its gear reduction thing. So if the motor's electrically okay, I'll have to check that later. Then I may end up putting it back in, just have all original parts. But we'll see. I'll probably fire it up with the motor that's in there to start out with, because there's no sense doing all that work before I even get the lathe up and running. So this is the module, and that's just got a couple of screws that pulls it up tight against the panel in there. And tested all the diodes, and they test fine according to the multimeter. I had to really put a load on them to be sure. I didn't bother, rigging some dummy load contraption. And all the wiring looks pretty good. Nothing's frayed, touching. All the insulation is in good shape. None of the components look burnt. It's real clean, actually. And it may be a newer replacement considering the trouble they were having with the machine. Maybe they did try to replace it. Not sure, but this one's in visually good shape. Oh yeah, and this one comes with the original lamp assembly, so that's kind of cool. It's in pretty good shape. It's not going to work if I don't hold the light on there. Toggle switch. It moves around pretty good. A little bit of rust in there, a little bit scary. So I may have to do some sort of treatment on this. Probably just take it apart and dip it and spray it and call it good. Maybe put a new outlet or a socket. So here's behind the cover. Still has its old belts on there. This pulley was actually taken off this guy right here and on a cardboard box. I'm assuming that's where it goes. I haven't bothered to look in the manual yet. Here's the rewound motor. It's an Imperial. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm sure it's fine. Doesn't seem to be too big of a mess in here. There's my bolt through the pallet. And so on the other side of that conduit, it's where the transformer and a couple of transformers sit. So the next step, guess I'll work on the electrical problems, get some oils coming, go ahead and drain and fill all the reservoirs. Probably other than that, a whole lot of cleaning, and so that'll probably be my main chore. Cleaning and learning the specifics of how the module drive works, and the use of the tubes and the braking and that sort of thing. I just need to get everything straight in my head so that I can, be a little precise with the troubleshooting when I do eventually power it up. So that's going to be all for now. I'll probably post another video once I find out what the heck is going on the machine and have something useful to say. Anyway, see y'all later.